While the number of believers was growing, most of the Pharisees and religious leaders still did not believe that Jesus was a Messiah or a Savior family. They did not believe that Jesus had been raised from the dead. These men would do anything to stop the message of Jesus from spreading too. They arrested, they would even kill some of the believers who spoke out for Jesus. Today, we will learn, family, of one of these leaders who did this and who did not believe in Jesus, and his name was Saul. He was very intent, family, on stopping the message of Jesus. Let's speak about young Saul. Saul was a Jewish Israelite boy whose father was a Pharisee. You can read about this family in Acts 23:6. Also remember, the Pharisees were the leaders of the Israelites, or the Jews. The Pharisees were supposed to help others who know God, but instead, we know that they added more rules to God's law. It was very intimidating, family. They were very prideful. Even though the Pharisees had the look on the outside of being religious, their hearts were far from God. And that's in Matthew 15:1-9. Most of the Jewish people believed that God favored the Pharisees because they had that look, that religious look on the outside. Back then, studying the Jewish law also was quite an honor. Only the brightest boys were chosen to be trained up to be the Pharisees, and Saul was one of these boys. Saul was very smart, family. He was a star student while always studying the ways of the Pharisees in Galatians 1:14 and Galatians 26:5. He really wanted to obey the things that he had been taught. He was very eager to please God. The problem was, family, is he had the wrong understanding of what God really wanted from him, and he believed his teachers who said that Jesus was not the Messiah. Saul thought it was right to also try to stop the Jesus disciples from spreading their message and telling the truth. Saul persecutes believers in Acts chapter 8. Saul becomes a strict Pharisee in Galatians 1:13. It was his job to teach others about God, but Saul did terrible things to those who believed in Jesus. He went from house to house, family, basically trying to find men and women who followed Jesus, and he would put them in jail. Acts 8:3. Sometimes Saul would go to the synagogues to find believers and beat them in Acts 22:19. Saul even put some believers to death. Acts 22:4 and Acts 22:20. The Bible tells of a very sad story when some of the religious leaders threw stones at a very wonderful believer named Stephen, just because he told others about Jesus. Family, Saul approved of Stephen's death and even held the coats of people who threw the stones in Acts 22:20. If Saul were around today, the doors of this room might fly open during our time together, and Saul soldiers might grab us, take us to jail, for teaching about Jesus. I mean, he would be the one to hunt you down. If you were talking about it, you couldn't talk about it. He would come for you. Saul tortured and killed those who were doing what was right and telling the good news about Jesus. Jesus prophesied to his disciples a time is coming when anyone who kills you will think he is offering a service to God in John 16:2. And this was the case of Saul, family. But there comes a time when Saul meets Jesus in Acts 9:1-9. We might think that this was a terrible punishment waiting around the corner for Saul, but Saul was about to meet Jesus, and Saul would be showered with God's grace. And that's what's so amazing about the Most High, is his grace, family. Read with me in Acts 9. Meanwhile, Saul continued to oppose the Lord's followers. He said that it would be put to death. He went to the high priest. He asked the priest for letters to the synagogue in Damascus. He wanted to find men and women who belonged to the way of Jesus. Excuse me. The letters would allow him to take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. And that's in Acts 9:1-2. Family, Saul had a plan. He planned to go to Damascus to round up more believers and take them to jail. But God had a very different plan. Proverbs 16:9 says, "In your heart you plan your life, but the Lord decides your steps you will take." Other men went with Saul. These were more likely servants and soldiers, family. On his journey, Saul approached Damascus. Suddenly, a light from heaven flashed around him.